and we also have an online product selector to help look through all of the different products that PAC offers, and also look through all of the different acoustical test information that PAC has to make that more easily accessible so that you can quickly find the information that you need for your projects that you're working on. And so time-wise, I'll go through this fairly quickly. It's something that you can all access on the internet. You can sign up for access to the assembly selectors and play around with it. And as you get into it, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help. And then at the end, after I talk about it, I'm happy to stay on any sort of questions, either pertaining to the assembly selectors themselves or PAC products or just acoustics more broadly. Happy to stay on and talk for a while, answer questions, anything like that. So without further ado, I'll get into it. I've got my screen shared here. Hopefully all of you can see that. Can I get confirmation from somebody that my screen is being shared? You can see this. All right, thanks, Bruce. So the website is PACinternationalllc.com. It's a new website that we've created to house the assembly and the product selectors and different information like that. So the first thing I want to show is the PAC product selector. So, you know, PAC started out, I think it's 22 years now, with the creation of the RISC 1, the rubber acoustic isolator that you can snap hat channel into. It really sort of revolutionized some of the acoustical isolation, that part of building acoustics. And over those years, PAC has come up with a bunch of different iterations of the RISC 1 and all kinds of other products as well. So we wanted to create a tool that makes it easier to sort of sort through, filter those products, and find the ones that work for your assembly. So we put that together. That's this PAC product selector on the website. And this is something that there's no login, you know, no sign up or anything to access this. You just click the link and you're right into it. So you can sort by sort of construction type, the type of project, commercial, hotel, multifamily, residential, theater, look at products that maybe apply to different areas. Different application types. So, you know, backing, wall braces, you know, more specific applications beyond just typical wall and ceiling isolation. Structural type, right? We have some things that only work with certain types of structures, or really more intended to work with ones than others. Fire rated, we have non-rated and fire rated. So the fire rated ones are products that show up in UL fire resistant design assemblies. The non-rated are not in UL assemblies. So you can still use those in, you know, single family construction, you know, you're building a home theater, listening room, those kinds of things, but they won't work on, you know, large commercial projects, multifamily projects where you need UL fire ratings. And then we have product groups, so sort of brackets and adapters. We have, you know, RISC hangers, we have springs, you know, the RISC 1 variants of it, the RC1 boost. So you can start to sort of sort through here. Say you've got cabinets on a project that you need to isolate. You want to isolate your cabinets, or you have cabinets that you're mounting on an acoustically isolated wall and you want to maintain that. So we have an option in here for cabinets. You know, say you're looking at, you know, ceilings. Here's all the different products that can work on ceilings, which is most of our products. All right, so this is a way that you can sort of start to sort through and filter PAC products. And this is something that we're continually working on, trying to hone this and make it easier to quickly find the product that works for those sort of specific application that you're working on. And on here, you can get some information in the table, you know, its applications, what the product is, the isolation type, is it rubber or spring or both? And then product info over here will take you to a little one-page flyer that you can have as part of a submittal or something like that. So that's really the gist of that. And then the next thing over here is the assembly selectors. So we have architect access and acoustical engineer access. The acoustical engineer access, the difference there is just access to additional data, third octane band data, that kind of stuff that us, you know, engineers like to nerd out on. So for the broader access, I'll go into the architect one. This is something that you do need to sign up for access to. When you first go here, you click on it, you'll get a little link to say sign in, and below it says register here, and, you know, give an email, name, company, you know, basic sign up information. We have two different assembly selectors in here. So one for ceilings, floor ceiling assemblies, and one for walls. So you can kind of go into whichever one applies to what you're looking for. I'll start with Ceilings, they're very similar in their sort of functionality with, a few tweaks because of the differences between ceilings and walls. So on the middle and the right-hand side, we have the table, and this table is dynamic, and it'll change based on the filters that we have over on the left-hand side. So we have filters for fire ratings. For floor ceilings, we really just have 1 hour fire rated assemblies, but for walls, we have 1, 2, and I think 4 hour rated assemblies. We have STC, so you can put in a range here. Say you want something that's a minimum of, you're working on a condo, something like that. You want a minimum of STC 60 and IIC 60. You can find the assemblies that meet those criteria. If you're looking for a specific UL assembly, say you're working on a project and it's already been decided that you're going to use UL 528. Right? You can find the assemblies that sort of fit within that UL fire resistant design. I'll go ahead and clear my filters here. And we have other ways you can, filter by the system type, whether it's concrete, steel, or wood, and then more specifically the structure type. So, say that you're doing a wood open web truss, you can just look at those sort of structures. You can or filter by flooring type, underlayment dimension, float, like does it have a gypsum concrete topping or maybe a normal weight concrete topping, and then ceiling isolation. So this is really where the PAC products come in. So the point of this is, say, we're working on, say you've got a multifamily project and it's going to be wood open web truss, and you want to find data for that, and you're looking for, this is market rate. So maybe you want to use STC ratings 55 and an IIC rating of 55. So you can come in here and find the assemblies that meet those criteria, and say, you're going to use wood floors. So you can come and look at all of these different assemblies, and each assembly that's in here is an actual assembly that was built and tested in the laboratory. A lot of times with other sort of assembly selectors that people will use, such as the Gypsum Association's Fire Design Guide. It has acoustical ratings in there, but it's really geared around fire. And so some of the things that work similarly for fire do not work similarly for acoustics. So it gives ranges for acoustical ratings and things like that. Some of the details that affect acoustics aren't really accounted for. Whereas in here, this is geared towards acoustics, but we also do address fire because obviously that's important. But the details are really geared around acoustics, and each assembly here is a laboratory tested assembly. So once you've got your results, you'll see here that for each one of the entries in the table, we have a depiction of the assembly, so you can quickly see differences between them. You can see differences in ceiling layers here, like this has a 2-layer chip ceiling, this has a single. You can see different isolators here. You can see different toppings sometimes, those kinds of things. And then to the left of that, we have a full description that lists all of the elements of the assembly and their dimensions. So you can see how thick the gypsum concrete was, how thick the bad insulation was, the spacing of the structural elements, all of those kinds of things. Over here, we have the ability to sort by, STC ratings, IIC ratings. You can sort, low to high or high to low. And then we have over here the one-page report. So if you click on this PDF link, you'll get a one-page PDF, and it gives you sort of all the summary information that you need about this assembly and the test. So again, we've got the depiction of the assembly and the description, and then we have the overall ratings. So we have the STC and IIC ratings. And we also have in here the HIIC rating. So for those of you that aren't familiar with these acoustical ratings, so STC is the sound transmission class. It's the reduction of airborne sound. So like if my kids happen to start screaming in the room next door while I'm talking, STC would be what we're looking at for how much isolation I've got from my door and my walls for that. IIC stands for impact insulation class. It's a measure of how much impact sound isolation you have. So if I had an apartment above me and people were stomping around, that would give us an idea of how much of that sound might get through. And the HIIC is a new rating. It's the high frequency impact insulation class. And whereas the IIC rating looks at this fairly broad range of frequencies from low, more the thump and thud, to the high, sort of the click. You think about high heels on a tile floor or something like that. The HISC rating really just looks at that high frequency portion, which would be sort of the click of high heels on or hard sole dress shoes on a ceramic tile, something like that. And you'll see this give more differentiation between flooring and underlayment options, but it really doesn't look at all at the low frequency that's often an issue in wood frame structures and things like that. So it's just a new tool that we have to sort of further differentiate between different assemblies, especially flooring and underlayment. So we've got all that information in here, so you can see this sort of product documentation. And the wall assembly selector works very similarly, like I said. We have the same sort of images, the descriptions of the assemblies. We've got one-page reports for those as well. UL assemblies where we have them in here. Filters are very similar, just with some changes, tweaks to make it work specifically for walls. So for instance, we've removed IIC impact insulation class because that doesn't apply to walls, but we've added OITC, which is outdoor to indoor transmission class, another way of measuring the noise reduction for walls. And we've sort of grouped this in terms of panel arrangement. So you can look at, this is number of layers on each side. So 1 is single layer of chip or something on either side. And we've got some different things like concrete and some tests with cabinets on here as well. Structure type, we've got steel studs, 20 gauge CH, 25 gauge, we've got wood studs, 2x4, and then concrete block. And it's worth noting that on these steel studs, these are actual 20 gauge studs. These are not equivalent studs. So this is a 33 mil, typically structural 20 gauge stud, and an actual 25 gauge rather than a 25 gauge equivalent studs. Structure dimensions, the depth of the studs or the structure, and then we've got the isolation here. So you can again go through and filter through all of these. And if you're looking for a specific test number, maybe you've seen it on product documentation somewhere else or it's been submitted, you can come here and look for that specific test. And this is also a way where if you limit it to something that you want, and then you've got some options and you want to look at specific things, then you can come here and just select specific tests that you want to compare to further limit your choices. And once you've limited it to a selection, another thing that you can do if you want to export the information from this table to save it, there's an Excel button up here as well as a print button. So if you click the Excel, you can, it's going to open up in another window for me. Let me pull this over. You can get a table of, the fire ratings, the overall STC and OITC ratings, UL assemblies, sort of a brief description of the assembly, and then these links here, once you make them an actual active hyperlink, will take you back to that full assembly depiction. It's a nice way to just sort of, if you've spent some time in there playing around and filtering assemblies, you can use this to save that. Put it in a table in Excel. I'm an engineer, I love Excel, right? So had to have a way to get stuff out to Excel. And for the acoustical consultants, those of you that get access to that one, that's where when you do an Excel export, you'll get the third octave band, TL and ISPL data when applicable, so that you can use that for your own calculations and analysis and things that you're doing for projects you're working on. And that is, I think for the most part, that's really it. Like this is, as a consultant, I always wanted data, right? I'm an engineer, I gotta have data, and being able to quickly find assemblies that are close to what I have in the project that I'm working on, right? Because there's a lot of test data out there, but the details in the assemblies really matter and they really affect the results that you get. And so it's important to be able to dig into those details and find tested assemblies that are as close as possible to what you have for the project you're working on. And that can be really hard to do when you've got to go through and read through all of these different details and go to a bunch of different sources, all these different places to try and hunt around for something that's close to what you've got. So we really wanted to make a tool to make that as easy as possible to help folks out. And so that's really what this is geared towards. If you're looking for something, either you have a specific assembly that you're trying to find test data for, or you have some broader goals of, well, we know it's going to be, you know, a 2x4 or a wood stud wall, and we want to meet code minimum of STC 50. Well, here's a way that you can come in and you can quickly do that and find some different ways of getting to those goals that you've set for a project. And PAC is continuously doing acoustical testing. We've already done quite a bit this year. PAC did a bunch last year. We're continuing to do more and more testing. So as we do additional tests, we'll be adding those into this database as quickly as we can. And there's also, you know, again, the RISC 1 was created 22 years ago. So there's, you know, decades of acoustical testing, and not all of that has been put in here yet. So I'm still going back through older test data, finding really interesting stuff and putting all of that in here to make sure it's accessible.